everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. It's your indie spotlight for the week of January 22nd, 2025. Rocky's back. Thank God. He hasn't been able to make the last couple of indie spotlights. And man, I miss you when you're not here because I love to get your take on some of these books. So Rocky and I were talking before we were recording. Man, such a fantastic week of indie books. Like I'm not even sure at this point what my book of the week is. Like there's a couple of contenders that are like really, really strong. So yeah, I thought it was a great week. What'd you think, Rocky?
Yeah, it was a really good week, and it's funny. Like as we're in preparation for this podcast / live stream, where I'm looking at all the books we're going to be reviewing, and I'm still at a loss. But fortunately, as we go along and we talk about it, I find myself sometimes I surprise myself by getting excited by a comic that maybe I didn't, that wasn't necessarily initially at the top of my pick of the week list. But when we talk about them and sometimes hearing your perspective, mixing it with my own, my views change. So it's going to be curious to see what we pick this week for the top of the list.
Yeah, the other thing is like we actually had to limit it. There was a week not too long ago. I think there's only 2 books. This week we're like, we want to talk about that, but we've got so many books. So like Arcbound number 3, I wanted to talk about in detail, but didn't make the cut. Rat City, World Tree, which I think is fantastic, but I'm not caught up on it. So we're like, okay, we're gonna leave that one aside.
Same.
So yeah, it's a very good problem to have. So we're gonna kick it off with a banger that's probably worthy of book of the week status here. Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger. We both loved the first issue. It was absolutely fantastic. So script plot by Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Patrick Reynolds, colors by Luis NCT, letters by Tom Orzechowski. Getting some origin, getting some context for who Gunslinger Spawn is. We get to see him as a little boy. We get to see him with his family. We know he has a sister. We find out his name's Tobias. It's all adding context and bringing some humanity to the character and maybe helping explain, why he makes some of the choices he makes. The art by Patrick Reynolds is amazing. But the other aspect of this is the fact that you don't need to have read any Spawn. You can just have picked this up on its own, and it's just a really interesting story on its own. There's mystery, there's intrigue to go along with the great art and the great plotting and pacing. It is a little bit of a slower burn. I will say, totally spoiled the first issue that we got like 48 pages or whatever it was, 40 pages, like double-sized, twice the amount of story for the same cost, or maybe it was $1 more, was definitely affordable. But then this one is, regular size, and it ended, and I just wanted more. I wanted it to keep going. I wanted more, partly because of the gorgeous art. Just look at. Does that just not look like the best Western movie you've seen on TV from Patrick Reynolds there with this demon?
It does. You don't have it up on the screen, by the way.
Oh,
you got the covers.
I don't. There we go.
Sorry. There you go. Yeah.
I always do that. Let me go back. Yeah, so you can see that fantastic cover. Here's the credits, and then you can see it starts off with action, him fighting against these parademons, or is it like one demon? We're not even sure, because we see these two come together. And that was the page that I was on here. They come together and form this guy, and he just looks like I said, like most amazing movie Western you've ever seen from Patrick Reynolds, and the mystery of what's going on and how did he become a Spawn, and how did he get his powers, and who's manipulating him, and what have you. And like I was saying, just wanting the next issue so badly. This is, look at the color work as well. I want to point that out because it's fantastic color work by Luis NCT. You can see night is falling, it's dark, but it's not so dark that you can't see what's going on. It has a mood to it, and an aesthetic that's fantastic. Here we have, flashing back, we get to see Tobias as a young child, his sister. Clearly he has a strong bond with her. That's going to be explored. We find out, that's part of why he's out there, part of who he's looking for, and what have you. So just amazing. And then having survived the night, these wolves that sort of helped him, but he's sort of on his last legs, and he ends up coming across these women who are bathing in the stream. They take him to the brothel where they work, and there's clues and context about how the madam of the brothel doesn't age, and you wonder what that's all about. Then come to find out she's got supernatural powers, some sort of demon as well. And when Gunslinger Spawn is confronted with her, he basically blasts her out the window with his 6-shooters, turns to leave when all the women of the brothel come busting through the door. And Bordello of Blood is the next issue. So selfishly, I wanted to continue because I want to see the Bordello of Blood. I want to see these evil / sexy women of the night from the frontier that are like really demons of the night, perhaps. Like what's going on there, drawn horrifically but also beautifully by Patrick Reynolds. I love everything that him and Jimmy Palmiotti are doing here. Again, it's a slower burn, which is in a lot of ways, if you've read classic Spawn, that stuff moves so fast. It was paced so quickly. I like this as a contrast to that, is going slow, and we're gonna get the reveal of how he became Gunslinger Spawn, we saw how, but get the reasoning behind it, why did it happen, as opposed to, how exactly. So I'm really digging it. What do you think, Rocky?
I think it's really good. One of the things that has to be said about Jimmy Palmiotti is that, and just to remind people, he had a very long run on Jonah Hex. Jimmy Palmiotti can write a Western tale in his sleep. So, but this, I don't want people to think that this is just maybe another glorified Jonah Hex tale, but instead of Jonah Hex, we got Gunslinger Spawn in the main story. No, this is different. We have, this is a darker Western tale that Jimmy Palmiotti knows all the tropes of a dark horror, a darker, really dark themed Western, and he knows the culture, he knows the background, he knows the history. But what he does also particularly well is that he clearly also knows a little bit about Spawn, and he incorporates the horror of Spawn. And so not only do we get a rich, in-depth origin story for him, grounded in character work and some tragedy because we get snapshots of the past of Gunslinger Spawn with his relationship with his younger sister, hints at a horror that happened when he was younger, some hints that we got in the first issue, and also we get the present where, look, this isn't the typical West. It is, but it isn't. You got a bordello of what looks like witches or vampires or whatever they are. You got darkness. You got this mysterious stranger who's in human, he's almost like a human form of the Violator a little bit. Like he's mysterious, but he has something to do maybe with how the lead character became Gunslinger Spawn. Lots of questions, but really intriguing. You said before that you don't need to know anything about Gunslinger Spawn going into this. You don't, but if you just know a little bit about Spawn, boy, you sure get a lot more rewards here. But as somebody who's not, I'm not a super expert on Spawn, I'm intrigued as hell. And I'm sure I have a lot of questions that maybe regular Spawn readers might already know the answers to because they know Spawn lore. I don't, but I almost feel like I'm pulled in all the more because of that ignorance and my desire to know more about it. And I want to thank you because you told me you snagged me a copy of the first issue, right?
Yeah.
I'll have to pick it up when I come down this year. I hope.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move on. Next book we're going to talk about is in the Ghost Machine universe, Hyde Street. I gotta say, I am a little disappointed. This is a Christmas issue. I'm a little disappointed that it didn't come out during Christmas time. But it's Hyde Street number 3, written or credited as storytellers, Jeff Johns and Yvonne Reese. Obviously, they're plotting it together. Jeff Johns is handling the scripting. Yvonne Reese is handling the artwork, and then we have inks by Danny Mickey, colors by Brad Anderson, and letters by Rob Lee. So give us your thoughts on this one, Rocky.
Well, what I really like about this is that we learn more, even though it's on the surface, I could maybe express a minor frustration that it's a Christmas issue and we're 1 month past Christmas, but it's very easy to forgive that delay. And number one, because it's no publisher's fault nowadays when there's delays in comics with the whole delays and distribution and the Diamond News and going back, all that jazz. The bottom line here is, regardless of this being a Christmas tale or not, we learn more about Pranky and Mr. X-Ray and some of the other citizens of Hyde Street, who, of course, they're sort of in a quasi contest where they have to acquire the most souls. And this is during the Christmas season where a robber dressed as Santa is going along robbing all the houses. And Pranky, of course, wants to acquire the soul, and he enlists the help Pranky has his own agenda, but he ostensibly has Mr. Hyde try to help him take out this thief, and along the way, he just through just a really great story. And I mean, it's horror filled. I mean, there's some moments here where you can see the terror and the horror in children's eyes when this thief is robbing them. And you can also see Pranky is one sick dude. And, this is one of those issues where you're dealing with everyone in the issue is kind of reprehensible. Mr. Hyde's not a great character, even though he's trying to redeem himself from the past wrong. Pranky is a sick bastard. He hates when people harm kids, and he has no problem. He wants to stay on Hyde Street. He doesn't even want to leave Hyde Street. He'd be happy if he could stay on Hyde Street and make life miserable for hundreds of people that hurts kids for time immemorial. But the way this story is written, Mr. Hyde is the one where he's got 10,000 more souls that he wants to acquire, so that he can leave Hyde Street and find his daughter. And in the meantime, Pranky knows what Mr. Hyde wants to do, and that's how he sort of goads Mr. Hyde in to helping him acquire
Mr.
this
X-ray.
other soul. Yeah, Mr. X-ray, and I thought it's just so well done. The character work is so good because this is the third issue, and already I can appreciate what Mr. X-Ray is going through. I feel that I feel sorry for him, even though I probably shouldn't. Even Pranky's growing on me, even though he's a sick little bastard. And then we meet some of the other characters in the story of the citizens of Hyde Street, which you can talk about, I guess. But I really enjoyed this. A great read, despite being a month late.
Yeah, the matinee monster that we see here in a great double-page spread. I can't really do it justice because I can't show it in one screen, but we get his score at the end here and see that he hasn't captured any souls, 0. What's interesting is he shows up, and for the first time in a Hyde Street comic, we see that the soul is not harvested. Nobody gets the soul. Not Pranky, not Mr. X-Ray, not the matinee monster. Because this guy's actually sorry. He's actually sorry. He repents, and by the rules of Hyde Street, no resident. That's what they're called, according to Jeff Johns. They're called residents. None of the residents get credit. Nobody gets the soul because this thief repents. So yeah, you're right. It's a Christmas story. I do wish it came out during Christmas time, but what a great way to sort of pass along this stuff without being exposition heavy, right? We learned so much. We learned that Pranky has far surpassed the 10,000 souls that he needs to leave Hyde Street, but he chooses to stay. And there's been hints of that before where, he's like reading the rule book and saying, once 10,000 souls have been required, a resident may leave. He's like, doesn't say I have to leave. And we know that Pranky gets on the bad side of the scorekeeper at times, and that's why he's supposedly is going to allow Mr. X-Ray to harvest this soul, because Mr. X-Ray does want to leave. You mentioned it. He wants to get back and find out what happened to his daughter. So Mr. X-Ray has some I don't want to say redeeming qualities, and it's talked about in the back where you get sort of this who's who type entry, where he's actually felt guilt when he finds out that he has a kid, and wants to get back and find out what happened to her, as opposed to Pranky, who doesn't seem to have any empathetic feelings whatsoever. And you wonder, it makes me wonder, like, okay, so the scorekeeper said, okay, Pranky, go and help Mr. X-Ray get some souls. because he actually does want to leave, and you've almost got twice as many as you need to leave, and you don't want to leave. So like, why are you harvesting any? But you kind of get the idea that Pranky wouldn't even have been able to let it. Like at the last moment, he would have harvested that Santa Claus, that Santa Claus thief. He would have not been able to let it go, because he's just, like he said, a sick little puppy. And he just can't help himself. He's just sort of inherently evil, and he hates adults. So again, just a great job of Jeff Johns and Yvonne Reese here, providing context into the rules of Hyde Street and the way things work and the relationship between the characters, while still giving us a story about another, person who found themselves on Hyde Street. And you can see why this guy did, right? Like, he's a bad guy. He's probably a career criminal. He's doing horrific stuff. Not just stealing from people on Christmas, but tells a kid there's no such thing as Santa Claus and what have you. There's a conversation that Pranky and Mr. X-Ray have early on in the issue. Pranky talks about, wanting to punish the people, and anybody who comes on Hyde Street, deserves it, and that's how he justifies harvesting all the souls and what have you. And Mr. X-Ray is like, anybody who's done something wrong can find themselves turning a corner and ending up on Hyde Street. Doesn't have to be the greatest transgression or whatever, and you could live your whole life and only do one or two things wrong, make a mistake, moment of weakness, whatever. I mean, to be human is to make mistakes. So anybody can find themselves on Hyde Street, and that's again, Mr. X-Ray apparently has found some empathy now that he's on Hyde Street. You think, there but for the grace of God go I, and then. And that's all story, and that's all plot. Then you add in this artwork from Yvonne Reese with the detail and the action scenes, and the wonderful camera layouts that we've come to expect from him. Great color work. I mean, look at how the colors alternate there between blue, red. Like, it's just fantastic. Very much feels like it's colored in kind of the Christmas spirit. The snow. I love the look of Mr. X-Ray with the X-ray glasses. Like, this is just, it's nearly a perfect comic. Like, it's just fantastic. It's hard to pick, like, favorite Ghost Machine title, and this is, horror, but it's also kind of strange in a Twilight Zone kind of way. I mean, it's horror in the way Twilight Zone is horror, but, maybe dialed up a little bit. And I'm not, like, the biggest horror fan, and yet maybe this is my favorite Hyde Street book, or favorite Ghost Machine book. I mean, it's just a fantastic book. Can't say enough good things about it. So definitely pick it up. If you haven't been reading it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So, all right, next up we have Life. This is from DSTLRY. Let me get it up on the screen. You guys can all check it out. It's kind of oversized, and it's this weird size. And not only that, this is a flip book. So on one side you have the prose, so you're reading the story of the prose. Yeah, Rocky's got it there in his hand. And the other side you're reading the cons. So basically the prose are these professional thieves that have gone to this prison planet to steal diamonds. And then you have the cons side, which is the convicts that are there. And the whole idea behind life is like life sentence, right? So if you're sentenced to like multiple life sentences in this universe, they don't run consecutively, or sorry, they don't run concurrently. They don't run at the same time. They run consecutively. So if you get sentenced to like 8 life sentences, they send you to this planet. You become immortal, and you serve out like 8 lifetimes. And what we have found in the last couple issues is that basically the human body is not meant to live that long, and because they're living so long, their bodies are mutating. And that's why they look so horrific, basically. So it's kind of gross in a lot of ways, but I think it provides context into, okay, what is it that really matters? You know what I mean? Like, it's so interesting, the juxtaposition of these thieves are there and they want to steal these diamonds. But one of the thieves is like, what is actually worth more than the diamonds to her is immortality. And that's, that's kind of interesting when you think about it. Because the thing about that is, like, what do you actually put value on, right? Like the material, or like living longer? Is living a longer life better? Is it worse? Is it worth it to be immortal if you're going to have all that? What's the word? Mutation, I guess. So, yeah, this has been a really interesting story. The one challenge, and I should give the creative team. So Brian Azzarello and Stephanie Phillips are the writers. The art is by Daniel Zezelj, I think, Zezelj. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. Lee Lowridge on colors. Jared K. Fletcher handles the letters and design. One of the things about trying to read this digitally with the press previews we get, though, you know, it is a flip book. So it's like you got to read one side and then you go to the very end and then scroll backwards. Yeah, it's one of those books that's probably a lot easier to read, like with an actual physical copy. But it is really interesting. So in this issue, we see that some of the prisoners are attacking the ship that the thieves came on to steal from. And meanwhile, we find the one thief that goes to the people that understand the immortality, and she's asking for immortality. She thinks that's what she wants. That's the real prize. The diamonds are worthless to the guys that are there. So again, that's what's so fascinating to me. This idea of what do you actually put value on? The diamonds are of no use to these people that are on their prison planet. They're completely worthless. They're no different than a rock or a pebble. But for the thieves that have the means to leave the planet, it's very valuable. But what's possibly more valuable? Immortality. And we can understand why that might be the case. But it comes at a cost. I mean, some of these thieves, we see at one point in the book, they're like, just kill me. Like, I don't even want to get, they have no hope of getting off the planet, but they would rather die than stay alive and keep mutating and what have you. So it's such a fascinating book. And to think about it in that way, like, what do you really value? What really has value? Some shiny rocks, shiny crystal-like rocks? Why are they valuable? Well, because we say they are. Isn't life more valuable? But at some point, don't you get tired of living? I mean, these prisoners, some have been there for centuries. And that's why the thieves, when they went there, they didn't think there would be anybody left alive, because it's been centuries and nobody's even like sending supplies or anything to this planet. But these guys can't die. So in a way, it's horrific. And I mean, immortality. I could choose one superpower. Immortality would be really tempting. And it's not because I'm so arrogant that I think I know more and I need to live forever. I'm just really curious. Like, what's the world going to be like in 500 years? I'll have no idea. I'll be long gone. But I'm really curious to know what that was. So that would be the reason that I would want to have more immortality. But it's that monkey's paw. We've all heard stories like you got to watch everybody around you that you love die. And I don't know that I would want that. But then if you said, okay, you can be immortal, but your body's going to mutate and you're going to like grow tumors, and I mean, it's all about quality of life, right? Is it really worth living? So maybe immortality is not what it's cracked up to be. But you can see it's very moody art, very moody colors. I think this is a story that's going to read really well, in like a hardcover. Partly because I get why they did it as a flip book and it's really interesting, but and again, maybe it's just because I'm always reading this digitally, even though I'm buying the physical copies. I don't get my physical copies as early as I have access to the digital, and I want to read it right away. So as soon as I get access digitally, I read it. But it is a little challenging to read digitally. So that's the other thing. Like, I wonder how they'll do it in hardcover. You're not going to flip both. I think they'll put everything in order of how it plays out. But yeah, this is a really good book. And I haven't heard anybody talking about it, so we definitely wanted to cover it here. What are your thoughts on issue 4 of Life, Rocky?
Well, I really like life, and to coin the phrase, life only has the meaning that you give it. And boy, does that theme come home here? And you nailed it. You spoke quite at length on it. I didn't need to elaborate on it, but I mean, the difference between the pros and the cons. Well, what this series really drives home for me is just how the meaning that we ascribe to life. I never thought before how much the setting and where we live might have an impact on how we view life. I mean, you live on a different planet. The meaning in your life might be very different if, because you got different diseases, different ailments, different obstacles. I mean, it's amazing. I never really thought before how much a setting has an impact on life. And I should think more about that because obviously, I mean, we got starving kids, and a starving kid in Ethiopia has a different view of life and what's precious than we in the first world country would. But this really hammers it home. We're different planets across the galaxy, and here this character called Queen Jesus, which I think, what a name. She's so narcissistic, has her YouTube channel, wants to be immortal, wants to live forever, and of course also wants the diamonds that they went there for the big heist, and all these people on the planet, they just want to either be able to be free to die and not live forever, because that's the irony. What's killing them, what they hate, the misery of their life, because they can't die, because their body is constantly regenerating and mutating. And Queen Jesus actually wants what they hate, what they've grown to hate. She wants the very thing that's making their life, immortal life, miserable. She wants. And the juxtaposition of that, the black and the craziness of that really hammers home in this issue that it's so the tricks our mind plays on us. And what do you really want out of life? And it's quite clear that all the characters in this issue really don't kind of know. They think they know, but they're just sort of desperate. And I think the biggest problem is they have it's their character flaws that define them, and it's a tragic of the human condition that we're never happy, no matter what setting we're in. Whether we're on a planet that has diamonds in it, we're still not happy. Whether we have immortality, but it comes at a cost, we're still not happy. I mean, it's crazy, but yet kudos to Brian Azzarello and
Stephanie Phillips.
Stephanie Phillips for making me think in that regard, because this is a really good issue. And I have to say, this reads so much better when you buy that oversized graphic compilation. It just reads so much better. I like reading it more. I would encourage people to buy it off the stands as opposed to reading it digitally. I think it's a much more enjoyable experience, especially if it's a flip book. But even if it wasn't, there's something about the extra big pages. It's beautifully rendered by Danijel Segel, and Lee Loridge's colors are just perfect. He captures the mood and the ambience just right. So yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, when I went to my comic shop this morning, their diamond shipment was delayed, and they didn't have the latest issue. I was bummed because I've read it twice digitally, but I want to read it like regular because I think it's it's just a better experience, like you said. So, all right, up next we have from Mad Cave, Revolution 9. We're up to issue number 3. This is from writer Mark London, Carlos Reno on pencils and inks, João Canola on colors, Dave Sharp on letters. Continuing the story of Velveteen, who is a character who worked for this clandestine organization, kind of like Illuminati-like. They're trying to supposedly bring peace on Earth and make things better. And she finds out early on in the series that really they're just in it for power, and they tell their agents what they want to hear. They're called revolutions because supposedly they enact change, these agents. And it's everything they've been told is a lie. They tell them whatever they need. They kill their parents or kill their loved ones, early on, and manipulate events so that these people that have the capability or potential to be these revolutions, to be these sort of ultimate fighting machines, ultimate assassins, killing machines, what have you, they leave them with nothing. So they really have no choice, and they're so tempted and ultimately say yes when the can't remember what the name of the organization, when the organization comes calling, and they have nothing else. They want to feel like they belong, so of course they'll say yes. But Velveteen discovers that she's been lied to her whole life, and she's out there trying to stop them, stop what the Order, that's what they're called, the Order is doing. And the action it's fantastic. Now, at times it does make for, kind of a quick read. And I, go back and do my kind of visual read and really take time to look at the panels and the action scenes and the body language and everything. And it's fantastic. So, don't know where it's going to go yet. We know it's leading up to a big crossover this summer that Mad Cave's going to do with Hour of the Wolf and Exit City and Revolution 9. I think Exit City is my favorite of the three, but it's close because I really love this. The whole idea. It's a little cliche. The whole idea of the Order and the secret society that's controlling the world and what have you, and somebody breaking free and trying to take it down with inside knowledge because they used to be a part of it. So yeah, again, really action packed, great art, really fast paced. Really curious to see where it goes. Love Velveteen as a character. She's awesome. I love seeing her wield, whether it's a knife or a gun or just her bare hands. She's so formidable. But there's also a humanity to her. Like, she realizes she's done these horrific things. She wants to make amends for them. That's part of the reason she's fighting back against the Order. And she gives, like, she's fighting against another one of the revolutions here, and she's trying to convince him. Excuse me. She doesn't want to be fighting him.
She gives him so many chances. Gives him so many chances, and he doesn't bite.
He's like, please believe me. I have proof. I can show you. And throughout the course of the fight, she realizes that he's so different from her. The Order for him was kind of justification for him to hurt people, and that's something that is inherent to him, that he always wanted. So ultimately he can't be saved, and so it's understandable when she has to use the final solution and she kills him with a pair of scissors. It's brutal, but yeah, great characterization, great action, great art. Really digging this title from Mad Cave. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I only skim read the second issue, and this issue was just solidly action packed. I just had a blast with it. I have to give full compliments to the art here, artist Carlos Reno, and the colors by João Canola. This really, they just popped off the page. There's a sheer joy reading it. I just loved it, and I just immediately loved this character. And I honestly didn't remember much from issue one, but this is one of those issues where it's like when you're dropped in the middle of an action movie and you don't know what you're watching, but it's a cool action scene, and the next thing you want to do is you want to rewind the movie to watch it from the beginning to see how you got there. That's how I was like when I read this, and this is just a great issue, and it's. You got into her character right away. This is a woman that clearly has gone through, she's had a checkered past. She's going through some kind of redemption now. She feels she wants to make amends. She's trying her best to convince, bends over backwards to try to convince a guy who's clearly a psychopath to maybe see the error of his ways. And of course he doesn't turn, and she unfortunately has got to do some violence toward him and does so. There's humor in it. At one point, one of her buddies was being interrogated. She shows up to rescue him, but as the guy's being interrogated, he asks the terrorist, what time is it? Because the terrorist is wondering he's questioning where is Velveteen, and he says, what time is it? And he tells him the time. He goes, oh, she's been here for 5 minutes already. and then she takes out all the terrorists. It's a really good scene. It was good humor. It started off. I mean, it's the type of humor that you'd almost see in a Marvel movie. Granted, the type of humor that's maybe come under criticism in some of the Marvel movies as being maybe overdone. It just seems to really work in this comic, and I quite enjoyed it. So it was it was a blast. And that's not, I can't say that for a lot of comics that are all action. That's not always a good thing, but it really works in this issue.
Yeah, I agree. So again, if you want to be on in the know with that crossover that's coming, you definitely want to be picking up these it's called the Underworld universe that Mad Cave's doing. So all right, up next we have Tin Can Society. This is from the Giant Generator imprint over at Image from Rick Remender. We've covered every issue. It's been fantastic. Don't have enough people talking about this book. Everybody should be reading this book. Everybody should be talking about this book. It's simply amazing. Stories by Peter Warren and Rick Remender. Scripting or writer credited as Peter Warren. Art by Francesco Mobili. Colors by Chris Schickery. And then letters by Jackie Marzon. So the whole idea of Tin Can Society, these childhood friends who were kind of nerds or misfits, didn't quite fit in junior high, and they bonded together, and they had these secret treasures that they, things they weren't supposed to have, candy and firecrackers and that sort of stuff, and they'd hide them in a tin can that was they had a secret hiding place under this tree where it was kind of buried. So that's where the name came from. But then it's kind of analogous, the name as well, because Johnny Moore, who is sort of the newcomer to the group in junior high, and he has it doesn't say specifically, I don't know if it's like multiple sclerosis or cerebral palsy or something, but he has issues with his legs and mobility, and so he uses braces and canes to walk. But he's a genius, along with Val, who you see here on this opening page. He's a genius as well, and the engineer, and they basically create these sort of motorized braces that give Johnny more mobility, and then eventually they use that technology to establish a tech company. And then, unfortunately, Johnny doesn't completely believe that Val's up to the task of the expansion of the company. And we see in this issue, it's talked about where Val, when he finds out Johnny is interviewing other engineers, Val leaves the company. There's sort of a rift. They don't talk for years and years. But the technology advances to the point where Johnny creates this almost like Iron Man-like armor and goes out and tries to be a superhero and calls himself Caliburn. And then various good and bad things happen. And in the first issue, Johnny is dead. Johnny is killed. Johnny is murdered, supposedly. And the Caliburn armor is stolen. So the Tin Can Society, the friends, some of who haven't seen each other in years, come together. They're trying to solve Johnny's murder. They're trying to protect his legacy. They're trying to get the armor back. And in this issue, they track the armor down. And one of those bad things that happened when Johnny accidentally killed somebody in the armor, come to find out the armor is in the home of the guy that got killed accidentally. It's in the home of his sister. That's where they track it down to. Also, not sure, this is supposedly Johnny's wife, I think, or girlfriend. She's running the company now. She seems like she doesn't have the best of intentions. Was she behind the murder? I have theories.
Yeah.
And we'll see. And it does flash back. Here's Johnny when he's still alive, talking to Val and what have you. So it does flash back a little bit back and forth. But like I was saying, they track the armor down to this woman's home. They go and try to get it back. And they assume that she's the one in the armor. And that's when you get an absolute holy shit, what the F is going on moment, because when Val sneaks in and locates the dock, like the machinery that the armor plugs into to recharge, there's a kill switch. You can see him hitting it there in that panel, and so the armor goes dormant. And they assume that it's this guy that got killed accidentally. They assume it's his sister that's inside it, but she comes popping out from down the stairs, and they're like, well, if you're here, then who's in the armor? And as soon as they say that, these like paramilitary guys come busting in. Who are these guys? Apparently they work for that woman that we saw earlier. Like, again, like she seems to have bad intentions. We'll talk about that a little bit more lately. But the Tin Can Society friends manage to subdue them. They grab, and the woman gets killed. She gets shot in the head. They grab the armor. They take it back to their place. And there's the whole idea. There you see the tin can. Is there anything left? And yeah, there's some themes there, and it goes into who I think might be in the armor. See it at the end here, and it's a little baby. It's a little baby that has a feeding tube going up its nose, so it's almost like this armor is serving as an incubator. So the baby's not controlling the armor. Somebody's got to be remote controlling the armor. Who's remote controlling the armor, and who is this baby that's been placed in the armor to protect it. And again, the whole idea of how is that analogous to, what's in the tin can that they had when they were kids, right? This idea of they were putting their childhood in there in a lot of ways, right? Candy or firecrackers or, things they weren't supposed to have, things of youth, things that, kids care about, little treasures. And so it's the youth in a tin can, right? The epitome or representation of their youth. Just like it's the youth, it's the baby in the tin can of the Caliburn armor. Now, it could be that this is Johnny Moore's offspring, but I think it's a clone of Johnny himself. That's my theory. And my theory is Johnny found out that whoever that woman was, whether it's girlfriend or wife or whoever, he found out that she was plotting to take him out or overthrow him or displace him or something, and he set up something where, if he was killed or set it up to where he would be killed or what have you, and he'd be like reincarnated or cloned, and maybe this baby, maybe it is Johnny, maybe this baby is controlling the armor, because maybe it's Johnny's consciousness that's a mature adult, but he's just in this little baby body and he's got to wait for the body to grow. Don't know yet, but man, when I got to this page and I saw there was a little baby inside, I was like, holy shit, what? Like, that was the last thing I expected. Completely unexpected. Just wild. I mean, the art is gorgeous, as you can see. The relationship between the friends, the Tin Can Society, all the different moving parts. Yeah, I was blown away by this issue. Like, yeah. As soon as I finished reading it, I immediately was like, man, I got to make sure Rocky doesn't skip Tin Can Society this week. So I think I texted you. I was like, dude, Tin Can Society, so good. Like, make sure you read it.
Yeah.
So 7 issues have been solicited so far. I don't know if it's only 7 issues.
Well, it's 8. I think it's 8 issues. The cover says 5 of 8.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. So yeah,
8 issues.
Yeah, 7 have been solicited so far, but so yeah, we're over halfway. Still so many questions. But oh man, is this good? So anyway, give us your thoughts on it.
Well, Wally Gimler is a character that died at the hands of Caliburn accidentally, and his sister, Wally's sister, is the one that was housing this armor, containing this baby. Like you said, it could be a clone, it could be the offspring of Johnny Moore. Could the sister be the mother? I don't know. How was this born? One of the things that Johnny had MS, or a disease that made him sort of like made him a paraplegic. So maybe, by cloning himself, he cloned himself or had an offspring that with his consciousness and the offspring that is free of the disease that he had growing up. Maybe that was part of this as well. But why in the armor? And it seems if you're trying to protect the baby, why would you have the armor? It seemed like you'd think you'd be risking the young baby's life by having the armor do the attacking. So it seems rather it's odd. It's interesting as hell. Lots of questions, but really the core and the crux of the story and what Peter Warren does so well is that it's grounded in a lot of character work and in that and of characters that we've gotten to know since issue 1, all with their own agendas, and all of them were established as potential suspects along the way, and then to have everything come, in this issue to get this, this is a complete misdirection. This is a complete surprise, and that's what I find. And same with you. We're just taken aback. Like, wow, what was going on? What was Johnny doing? What was going on? Like, he must have had some other agenda. What actually happened to him? And how did we get to this point where there's this baby in his armor? It's quite something. And, I'm in for the long haul here, but, Peter Warren, and of course with Rick Remender, as overall storyteller, this is a really great story. And just, my God, it keeps getting better and better from issue to issue.
Yeah, again, just blown away. The character work, fantastic. So obviously, yeah, pick up Tin Can Society. It's a heady read, good chunk of story every issue, and we definitely recommend it. All right, up next, Time Waits, issue number 3. This is the finale. This is from DSTLRY. It's written by co-writers Chip Zdarsky and David Brothers, illustrated by Marcus Toe and Marvin Sinapar, colors by Matt Wilson, lettered by Ariana Mayer. Now, I did read this, but it'd been such a long time since I read the first 2 issues, and it's time travel, so it's a little confusing. So I don't know that I totally got it, but it was entertaining. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But I know you, Rocky, you took the time to go back and like read all 3. So give us your thoughts on it. Break it down for us.
Well, first of all, if you love time travel tales and time and misadventures in time, this is absolutely a comic for you. You have to get this. If you don't, well, maybe you don't want to read this. But frankly, I just don't understand why people can't be entertained by time travel, because it's just so awesome. The fact that you can, that you can change time by doing something. I mean, it's just cool. Now, in this case, we have this is basically the story of a guy named Blue. And he's basically in the future. He's basically well, the first issue sort of starts off with him. He's on a mission into the past to acquire these seeds for the future, because the future there's some seeds that are necessary to grow food in a dystopian Earth-like future, and he's sort of sent back with a military unit, and he ends up getting trapped in the past, and he's got these seeds, and one of the issues of the story is that they can only go back 52 years, and they're limited as to how far back they can travel, and there's certain windows where they can travel back, but in actual, the true crux of the story, again, as all good stories are, it's grounded in character. The Blue character, who is this bearded African-American man, he falls in love with a woman with a sheriff named Grace. And he ends up with sort of an adopted son named Duke. And he establishes a life for himself in the present. But the future is always coming back to haunt him, because one of his fellow officers wants to get revenge on him because of what happens in the first issue. So he's angry, and it becomes personal for his arch nemesis named Wyatt, who's this red-headed, larger sort of higher ranking individual. And as it proceeds, and this is the 3rd issue, this is the 3rd and final issue, everything comes full circle. And this 3rd issue is literally the 3rd act, so to speak. If you were to break these 3 issues down, you could break them down like in a movie, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd act. And this is where everything comes to full circle. And in this issue, Blue is he's apprehended in the past. He's brought to the future. He's put on trial. And it's basically a giant jailbreak. And who breaks him out in the future? Well, the older versions of his wife, Grace, his son, Duke, who's now an older man, and another one of his buddies who's a baker from the past. In the future, they break him out, and they facilitate returning him to the past, where some time travel shenanigans happen, and it does result in a happy ending, but with a degree of there is a degree of sadness as well. It's a happy ending, but it's one that also it makes one reflect on it's interesting that we just finished reviewing Life from DSTLRY, and this is a DSTLRY tale. In many ways, this has a lot to say about life as well. Life is what you make it, whether you live in the present or the future. What's the meaning of life? Well, whether the lead character here, Blue, was in the future or in the past, he found a life to live, and it just so happened the one that he cherished the most, what happened to be in the past, which is our present. And it's all about the people you love, the friendships you make along the way, the bonds that you make along the way. And that's really juxtaposed against Wyatt, his arch nemesis, who hates him so passionately that his hatred of Blue almost defines his life, ultimately to the detriment of Wyatt. But there's forgiveness at the end, and a redemption of even the bad guy at the end, because it doesn't have the typical ending with the bad guy getting his comeuppance. Rather, God forbid, you actually have forgiveness. and a redemption even for Wyatt, the arch nemesis. I thought it worked really well, and I thought it was more than just a time travel tale. It was character based, and Chip Zdarsky just did a really good job here. I think I've this reminds me. I'm gonna forget the name of it. He had another Image title, Chip Zdarsky, that I thought was really good. That dealt with a small town where no one aged.
Stillwater.
Stillwater, thank you. It reminded me a lot of the character work in Stillwater. I thought it was reminiscent of that as well. David Brothers' art, I think, is just fantastic. Marcus Toe's colors, really good stuff. And yeah, this is definitely one of my. Now, admittedly, I read all 3 issues again today, so this has my bias because everything's fresh to me, but I really enjoyed this, and it gets my recommendation.
Yeah, David Brothers co-writer, Marcus Toe art. Yeah.
Okay.
But
I stand corrected.
You're right. And yeah, isn't this, like, you mentioned the forgiveness, it leaves with, hey, if I ever see you again, I'll kill you. But then we get this, sort of flash forward in the bar. Isn't that Wyatt right there? So that clearly
they were buddies.
And, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And it ends with Blue not killing him. Yeah. It ends with Blue bringing him into the present, bringing his arch nemesis back into the past, but letting him go and showing him that with the seeds that they stole at the beginning, that he used the seeds to grow a garden in the present, showing that the future is going to be okay. And then basically you could see that for Wyatt, he could see how pointless his hatred was. What was he fighting? Why did he want it? Like, you could see, and Wyatt could see that too. And there was really no point to kill Wyatt. And that was ultimately the most heroic thing that Blue could do, was let this person go. And he just sort of like walked away. And it was, and there is a other aspect to the ending as well that is quite heartfelt that I don't need to spoil. But again, I thought it was a really great tale. And frankly, I know it's cliche to say, but I would love this to be a movie. I would love to see this as a movie. I know we need another time travel movie like we need A Hole in the Head, but I want another time travel movie, and you can call it Time Waits.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was fantastic as well. I think I need to go back and reread all 3 as well, because there's things that I'm missing. But yeah, it's that Zdarsky guy. He can pull at the heartstrings at times. Which, I've met Chip. I've interviewed Chip. Chip's like a really nice guy. Humor. Excuse me. Humor's a big part of his personality. Sometimes I wish he wasn't always cracking jokes and he'd be a little more serious. Because, this is something I want to talk about and get serious with him about, but, gonna crack jokes because that's who he is. So, anyway, let's move on. Up next, we get the graphics up there for you. It's Vicarious. Oh, man. Here's another one. Definitely consideration for Book of the Week. This has been a fantastic series. I think we've reviewed every issue. And that being said, I think this is the best issue of the series so far. It's written by Ryan Parrott, illustrated by Eleonora Carlini, colored by Mattia Iacono, with Luca Mattioni, and then lettered by Becca Carey. So, we've been following this Amon, who was at first going by the name of Justin, who's this proxy. So basically what that means is he lets people like sort of jack in and sort of ride along in his brain, and they don't get to control his actions unless you go too far and hack. I mean, proxies are already illegal. But what it does is it allows you to feel the sensations that Justin or Amon feels. But as the story's gone on, we've seen that Justin is not Justin, and we saw Justin's body in the bathtub, and so who was Justin that then became Amon, that then rose in kind of the world of proxy to get paid very well and to be, one of the most in demand and, be super famous and be making all this money or what have you. And then it all came crashing down when he went to this place where it was this party in Monaco where he was, supposedly the more risque behaviors were allowed, and you could do something where multiple people would jack into you, and so all kinds of debauchery and sex with multiple partners and what have you. But he's not feeling quite right, and he goes into the bathroom, and somebody talks to him through the mirror, and he just leaves. So come to find out that, I mean, it cost a lot of money for his handler. It cost her a lot of money and damaged her reputation. And so last issue, Justin got attacked by a rival proxy, because that rival proxy, Christian, was kind of the top dog of proxies before Amon came along, before AKA Justin, who's not really Justin, came along and sort of challenged him for that title. He was the one that was supposed to go to that party and make all the money, and they have the same handler. So his handler is the one that set Justin up to get beaten last issue, and now his implant's not working anymore. Nobody can write it, and she turns him away. She doesn't want to, and Justin realizes, or Amon realizes, that she's the one that set him up for a couple reasons, right? Like, she's the one that told Christian that he had done it. And she's just out for herself. She's just a very selfish, narcissistic individual. Why did she choose to send Amon instead of Christian, even though she was supposed to send Christian? Well, because Amon was the hot, shiny new thing. So she knew she would make even more money. So now she's pissed off that her reputation was damaged. She didn't get the money. She doesn't want to lose Christian as a client. She doesn't trust Amon anymore. So she basically, throws him away. And it's not enough that she says, I'm not going to be your handler anymore. I'm not going to set up proxies for you, or people to proxy in for you. She blackballs him. So he can't even, he can't get another implant. He can't get even some of his most loyal users that would use him as a proxy to use and pay him or what have you. So he has to kind of go home with his tail between his legs. And this is where it gets super interesting. We find out that, first of all, some people show up at his apartment when he finally gets back to his apartment, and we find out that Justin was the guy that was living at the apartment, and his parents are there. And we don't know exactly how much of this is true, but what Amon tells them is that, yeah, I met him, I needed a place to stay, he said I could crash on the couch, and then he just disappeared one day, and I don't know where he is. He ran in, I moved in, and he was gone for days and days, and then he came home and was here for long enough to throw some clothes in a bag and run out. Basically Amon's trying to make it seem like somebody else was after him when we know it was Amon that actually killed him. And the way we know that is when Amon goes home, it's like this mansion. We find out his dad is super influential businessman. He's about to run for governor. His mother's completely oblivious, doesn't know what's going on. Amon says terrible things, and it just kind of whatever. She doesn't care. It's just, yeah, I don't. It's almost like,
and his name's Micah too.
They call him Micah. His name's Micah. So he's not Justin. He's not Amon. He's Micah. But yeah, you wonder if his mom has a mental illness or something that she can't. Can you not perceive reality? So anyway, he has a very contentious relationship with his father. He's done things before where his father's had to spend money, cover up, whatever. We find out his father was behind that trick in the mirror. His father tracked him down, found out he was being a proxy. Now, his father, he's not doing this out of love of the son. He wants his son to follow in his footsteps with business and then politics, because, it will continue his legacy. But also, he hides the stuff that Micah does, the mistakes that Micah makes, because he doesn't want it to reflect badly on him. So the things Amon has done, Micah, Amon / Justin, whoever, this kid, things he's done, he wants them hidden. So Amon tells him, yeah, so I killed this guy because he didn't leave me a choice. He was blackmailing me once he found out who I was and who you were, and that I was hiding from you, and I didn't want him to, tell you where I was. And, eventually the money ran out, and I had no choice but to kill him. And the father just doesn't bat an eye. He goes, okay, well, you took care of business. At least, well, that won't come back on you or what have you. He's like, so, you're here to give in. And Michael's like, no, I'll never stay here. I'll never follow in your footsteps. But I can help you. I can give you how would you like to be the one that took down this kind of underworld or underground world of proxies? What kind of publicity and influence will that buy you? Because Micah has discovered the world. He knows the movers and shakers in that world or what have you. He has an in with that world. And so he tells his dad, yeah, I'll do this for you. You'll have, more influence and clout than you've ever had, and then you let me go. That's the deal that they make. So he pays for Micah to get another implant, and it's an implant that's kind of more advanced than a lot of the regular implants. And then he calls and sets up a session with Christian where he says they have to be hardwired rather than in different places and connect over the web or what have you, over the internet. So he lures him there, and then he hacks him in some way where Christian can't even move, and Micah basically says, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill you." So Micah seems to be a really bad guy. Really bad guy. It's such a satisfying issue because we get so many answers. We learn so much of what's going on. In a way, you sort of root for Micah because he's a bad guy, but so's everybody else, including his father. But at the same time, you're like, man, maybe I don't root for anybody. Does this story even have a protagonist? The art by Eleonora Carlini has been fantastic throughout. This has been a really interesting story, really mysterious up to this point. Now that we've had so many answers with this issue, it feels like the intensity of the story and the stakes have been like dialed up to the max. And it felt like this issue just felt like it turned everything on its head. And like I said, best issue so far. I like this series, the entirety of the series, even more. This issue elevates all the issues that came before it. The art is excellent. Like, man, just so good. So good. This was another one of those like moments when, that it was that scene with his father where really everything clicked. And it's kind of analogous to seeing the baby in the armor that we saw in Caliburn. That scene with his father where everything is sort of laid out. It's kind of the same kind of, oh my God, wait, what's going on? The fact that he just confesses to murder, like, yeah, Dad, I had to kill this guy. His dad's like, all right, you took care of business. Like, wait, what? Like, what a fucked up family that is. So, yeah, I just thought it was fantastic. I know you've been enjoying it as well, Rocky. What do you think of this issue?
It reminds me of a very, very twisted, darker, alternate take on the talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah.
Where, and it's called Vicarious, and the idea that you can live vicariously through other people's experiences. And yet I find it ironic that this Micah character, who's the son of a governor or the son of a wannabe governor, a councilman, he didn't even need implants in the first time when he took over someone else's identity. He just went and he basically killed this Justin character, took over Justin's life, and then lived Justin's life. And the first issue was a snapshot of that. And we thought this Justin character was sort of innocent and just desired to be a proxy, when in fact it was a far more devious character whose deviousness and slyness and deception of character has manifested gradually over the last 4 issues, and really culminating in this issue where, this lead character, this so-called protagonist, he's a real a-hole. He's kind of an antagonist, but at the same time, we're kind of rooting for him to get some revenge on Christian and the powers and the whole proxy power structure that's in place. And it's really good. And I love all the, I love it. And, kudos to the Ryan Parrott. This is another one where, there's so many great IPs out there. This is just such a great, you would think, especially now with the advent of AI and everything, I'm just waiting for this is a concept that I think would just be really ripe for a movie, because it's really good. Because wow, what an about shift. Like, and you said it. I mean, the sudden realization that the person that we've been cheering for might be the biggest jerk, the biggest bad guy in this entire story. And I'm really curious what's going to happen to Sylvia Sin, his employer or original employer that sort of betrayed him and had Christian beat him up. What's going to happen to her? We're going to find out in the probably, I'm assuming, in the next few issues. But just really a really great story, and the art as well just really hammers home. Just does a great job on the art. I apologize, the artist Eleonora Carlini, great, really great art.
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to that moment where he tells his dad he killed him. He's like, yeah. And he's like, well, he didn't leave you much choice. I wouldn't lose much sleep over it. Like, not even, okay, you got away with it. That's fine, whatever. Don't even think about it. Don't lose sleep over it. Like, oh my God. Like, how many how many people has he murdered? I'm sure he's ordered, many killings to get where he is,
Yeah.
but has he killed with his own bare hands? Maybe when he was younger. Yeah, just brutal. Just brutal storytelling. Really interesting. All right, next book we're going to talk about here it's another Mad Cave book. It's Hour of the Wolf. This is a pretty fast-paced story and has been throughout, so it's a relatively quick read. It's written by Mark London. We have art by Danilo Bayrith, Fabi Marquez on colors, Dave Sharp on letters. This whole idea of the Hour of the Wolf is that these sort of supernatural police force, if you will, they can only exist in the hours between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., and they travel around. They sort of time travel. They go through doors, and they appear someplace at 3:01, and they have to leave that place by 3:59, or they'll be trapped there forever. So Owen, who's the main character of this story, has gone to this house where there's been a painting that sort of traps people's souls, and he's trying to save the wife and daughter whose husband was killed by the painting, and he's the one that bought the painting because he heard it had powers or what have you. So the painting is sort of manipulating reality for Owen and this woman. So we get some backstory into who and where Owen's from. It's like London in the 1800s, right around the time of Jack the Ripper. The art by Danilo Bayrith is really fantastic. This issue feels like a little bit of a transitional issue with mostly the origin of Owen and adding context and finding out, like I said, where he lived and who he was, and he was brought in as kind of a special investigator to try to catch Jack the Ripper, and to see the way the painting can manipulate reality and what have you. So it's fun, but there wasn't a lot of, I felt like, meat to the story. I still enjoyed the issue, and I was very grateful for the context to kind of get to know Owen. Although, we get to know him in terms of kind of his past, but I still feel like his characterization isn't fully fleshed out yet. Other than he just seems sort of, generic do-gooder. But I know there's got to be more to it than that. Like, what made him want to catch Jack the Ripper? What made him, sort of make the sacrifices? Because he is injured, and we see that when they first get to London. They come across his body there, and there's another woman from that supernatural police force, Wolvenheart, who gives him the option. Hey, you can die here peacefully in the place that London, or you can, come with me, live forever, and try to stop evil. But is it really living forever when you only exist in 1 hour? You go traveling through time, and you only live between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m. Like, yeah. I mean, maybe for a night owl like me, that'd be great, but it's not for everybody. So, what makes somebody make that choice? But I am enjoying this. Again, this will be one of the titles that crosses over with Exit City and Revolution 9 for Mad Cave's summer event. So what do you think of it, Rocky?
Oh, it's funny. It's in keeping with our earlier talks about, what is life? What kind of life is it if you only live between 3 and 4 in the morning? Yeah. Most of the time I'm sleeping at that time. But this guy, wow, he's saving people. He's saving people from darker mythologies. And if he fails to protect them, you get trapped in whatever that mythology is. So it's an interesting concept. There's I will say that this issue, I think that, I say with great respect, I think that the art could have been a little bit more horrific, because I think the whole idea, particularly in the painting where he comes across the bodies of all the people that the painting has actually corrupted, essentially the bodies that he failed to save, and the husband of even one of the women in the story here, it could have had, the art could convey a little bit more of the horror, I thought, maybe a little bit more effectively, because so that's a criticism, and I'm just comparing it because particularly this week we've read a number of titles that really explored the darker, horrific elements, quite frankly, and this one I think the art could conveyed that, I think, a little bit more powerfully. But the story manages to do that. There's certainly there's a sadness and a tragedy to the sacrifice that Owen has to make in order to help people like this, even though he did it to save his own life. There's a tragedy to it. I wasn't really sure what the point was. Why make him a detective in his origins in Whitechapel after Jack the Ripper after Jack the Ripper's killings ended? Why not incorporate Jack the Ripper somehow? What was the point of that? You know what I mean? It just seemed like, could have had a little bit more of an impact there. So I'm being nitpicky here, but I'm intrigued by the story, but I'm still not entirely sure. Is this going to have an end point? Is there any way that he can break the curse that curses him? Or is this just the beginning of what's going to be an ongoing series or a series of comic book series on this particular character? I don't know, but it's got a lot of potential. But there's something not quite there that's clicking for me. But maybe it'll come in the next few issues. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think those are all valid criticisms. That's why I love it when you're on to talk about these books with me. Yeah, because you're right. Why did they make him a detective? Maybe it's something that pays off later on down the line, because the concept itself of Wolvenheart and a supernatural police force that only exists between 3 and 4 of the hour of the wolf, that's fascinating. But are you fully taking advantage of that? Would have been better to just have him be average Joe citizen and be trained by Wolvenheart. Would that make for a better story, make it more powerful and what have you? And I agree with the art as well. As much as I love the art, if you want to kind of up the stakes and make it feel more menacing, if you had art that was a little more, I don't know, mature or a little more horrific, I think it would accomplish that better. So, all right, last book we're going to talk about in detail. And again, there's a lot more books that we could have talked about, but again, just in the interest of time, we wanted to kind of just talk about these specifically. It's In Bloom. This is from writer Michael W. Conrad. The art is by John J. Pearson with an art assist by Lola Bonato, lettered by Pat Brosso. Rocky read the first issue. I didn't read it. But then after hearing him talk about it, I went back and read it. And I thought it was really, really good. But I did not get a chance to read the second issue either. So, but I know you did, Rocky. You wanted to talk about it, so take it away.
Well, it's funny because the central mystery that is established in the first issue is just it still exists at the end of the second one. We just get sort of more killings, and it's just sort of expanded upon. Where this really stands out is, I say again that this is Michael W. Conrad's best work, in my opinion, and and I've been pretty hard on him in the past with his DC work, but I really enjoy this. Again, this has a horror element to it, and I got to give credit to the John J. Pearson's art here. The whole idea of In Bloom, basically the idea is that we human beings, we're all basically glorified plants, and we're waiting to bloom. And when we bloom, sometimes we can look beautiful, but sometimes we can look pretty awful. It can be horrid, and our heads can blow up like a balloon, explode into into wood or the particles, or it can be horrific, or we might just bloom a little flower out of our ear, like the lead detective looks like. And so it's a world where there's the bloomed, and then there's the unbloomed. And there's a certain category of unbloomed that if you're kind of rejected and you're old and you reach a certain age and you haven't bloomed, you're sort of recycled. And that's what happened. It's sort of, there's a horrific element to that, and so there's the bloom and the unbloomed. And so there's a central suggestion. What's hinted at in the narrative is that maybe there's something more to the bloom than what we're led to believe. And there's secrets, and there's also what the police call a terrorist organization called the Lotus. And the Lotus it's actually an organization of human beings that don't want to bloom. Like, they don't want to bloom, and they're against the blooming. And when you see what happens when you bloom, it's kind of hard not to be sympathetic to the Lotus, so-called terrorists. And and members of Lotus are families, including young children, and it really sort of like really builds up this idea that, and again, I mean, maybe it's because I just got life on the brain here, but this is really a strange, what the hell is. It definitely puts a new spin on one's life if you're waiting. I mean, the whole idea of waiting to bloom. I mean, wait, when is something big going to happen in our life? Imagine really literally never knowing when all of a sudden you're going to bloom. And a lot of the trauma experienced by the lead character in this issue is a trauma in his life when he witnesses his wife bloom, and I mean, her skin rips off, her face opens up like a blooming flower, showing the disgusting skull and underneath and the eyeballs. It's absolutely horrific. And of course, on the scene itself, she experiences it. It happens under moonlight, and the person who blooms themselves feels beautiful. And there's something, it's such a powerful phrase where she says, it's beautiful. And as it opens up, and it's a horrific image, while the character itself is experiencing bliss. And it's that juxtaposition of those two things is very powerful, and it hits the reader, and you really get the horror element here in a way that you didn't get it in the previous comic we read. It's this is a prime example, this comic, of where having the right artist can really hammer home a narrative that in the hands of a different artist wouldn't have the type of impact it does. And so this is really powerful. It works really well. I have a lot of questions. At the end of the second issue, I still feel like we're still in the middle of a setup. That might be a little bit of a criticism, but at the other hand, I'm enjoying the visuals so much. I don't mind the slow pace to the storytelling, and I think it's paced well. It is slow, but it works, and because the art is so well, and again, the artist does such a good job of conveying different types of flowers, different types of blooming, and all in the background when you're seeing these characters. It's very well done, and I think if it's one of those comics where I appreciate it more. You actually want to read this slower to appreciate the art, because ironically enough, the very art itself conveys the central theme of the entire comic in bloom. So you're looking forward to these characters sort of blooming, and it's a good thing. And whether or not blooming is good or a bad thing, that's still an open question, arguably. And so I'm really enjoying this, and I really have no idea where this is going. And that's a compliment to the writing, and again, high compliments to the art. So,
yeah, I mean, John J. Pearson, Eisner Award-winning artist. I got a chance to meet him at New York Comic Con last year. He works, with pencil and paper, but like mixed media. So sometimes he's painting, sometimes he's airbrushing, sometimes he's using acrylics, sometimes it's pencil, sometimes it's chalk. I mean, it's fascinating. He was showing me his pages and explaining what he did and whatever. It's like just beautiful art. He did that. I think it's called Deep in Blue, or that jazz book that he did that he won an Eisner for. I think was it Ram V that wrote that? I'm trying to remember. But yeah, it was fantastic. It was beautiful. It was very interesting, and you juxtapose that against this horrific image. I mean, this is still like beautiful in a way, but in a different way, in a horrific way, which I find to be. I mean, like you said, it's just it's definitely horrific. But he also did Mindset with friend of the show Zach Kaplan, which was really fantastic. But Blue and Green, that's the name of the book that he did with Ram V. So yeah, I mean he's the reason I think that I'm attracted to this book, because it is so beautiful to look at, but like beautiful but also horrific, which is, I mean, all you have to do is look at that image right there that's on the screen to kind of get that sense. So anyway, let me give a couple of the other books that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you might want to be on the lookout for this week. Void Rivals from Robert Kirkman. Salila kind of reaches the end of her journey with the hand droid that she's been on. Derek plotting to try to find a way to bring the two different worlds together. I've talked before, in sort of typical Robert Kirkman fashion, each individual issue doesn't give a ton of plot, you got to read 3 or 4 together to get a big chunk of story. But there are some momentous things that happen in this latest issue, issue 16. And that's probably my favorite Energon book. It's really fantastic, so I do recommend it. We mentioned earlier World Tree, issue 12, so the end of the second arc. I do recommend that from James Tynion, as much as I'm not caught up on it. I think I'm about 3-4 issues behind, but I will be caught up on it by the next time the next issue comes out. That's just a fascinating book about human nature and technology and how insidious it can be and what have you. Really great. King Spawn is up to issue number 41 from Todd McFarlane's Spawn Universe. House of Slaughter up to issue 29. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crosses over with Naruto, has the second issue. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, 313. That's the Larry Hama run that started way back in, I think it was 82 or 84 at Marvel. That thing's still going. Rat City, number 10, from Erica Schultz and Jay Carlos. Really fun book. The only reason I haven't talked about the last couple issues is because it's sort of similar to Void Rivals, where not a lot happens in any one individual issue. And part of that, I think, is the art by Jay, where it's really big art, like big panels. So there's not a lot of room for a lot of panels to get a lot of chunk of story in each individual issue. But speculated earlier, there's a new villain that shows up in that issue, and you know, sometimes they'll spawn villains. They're momentous. They're impactful. So yeah, if you're so inclined, you might want to pick that up. Also, Star Trek number 28, leading into the Lore War, is out this week. Arcbound number 3, another book I would have loved to have talked about. Got a chance to read it, but it just didn't quite make the cut. So a lot of great books out this week. I know I had a couple I was considering for book of the week, but I'm gonna put you on the spot, Rocky, and make you go first. Yeah. What are you picking for book of the week?
Well, thank you for taking your time talking for the last minute and a half. You allowed me to collect my thoughts. As you were talking, I was scribbling away, ranking and thinking about here's my top 5. I'll cut right to the chase. It was really tough, but I'm going to stand by this. Coming in at number 5 for me was Life. I really enjoyed it. Azzarello and Stephanie Phillips, great job. Love the art. Deadly Tales of Gunslinger Spawn. It was really good. That comes in at number 4. I put Hyde Street at number 3. It was competitive for number 1. I really liked Hyde Street. I thought the character work was fantastic, and I agree with you that Hyde Street could very well become one of the best Ghost Machine titles, but it's only 3 issues in, so it probably still needs some room to grow. Coming in at number 2 is In Bloom, that we just finished reviewing. I love it more and more when I talked about it with you, and I really think it's got a lot of potential, and I think it's something that, again, it's only 2 issues in. I think that might be a comic to watch, but I had to go, and this maybe is a little bit biased because I just read the 3 issues, but I'm going to go with Time Waits, because as I talked with you about it, I realized how heartfelt it was and how much sort of the themes about life and about the lead character, what he experienced, and really the entire story encompassed literally his entire life. It really hit home, and I thought it had an impact for me, both personally and in terms of just the character arc and the hero's journey that the main character went on. So I thought it was pretty good. So Time Waits by DSTLRY is and may I just give a comment about DSTLRY? Arguably the best publisher out there in terms of consistently everything they publish is good. I can't think of they haven't published anything I've disliked yet, not once, and that's something, and that's rare. But yeah,
I think maybe Life or well, just last week we had God, what was the name of the book that came? Oh my God, I just talked about it. The book that came out last week from Scott Snyder and Jock. Remember what it was called? You won't feel a thing. Yeah. You won't feel a thing. Yeah.
Right.
That might be my favorite, but I love White Boat as well. But I love Life as well. Like, those are my top 3. Oh, but Big Burn is, probably those 3 are my top 3. Big Burn, probably top 4. But yeah, those are all great books. If I had to pick just one to continue reading, I don't know which one it would be. So yeah, you're right. DSTLRY is absolutely killing it. Man, what an incredible week of indie books. And I say that partly because, so I made you go first, hoping that you would pick one of my top 2, so that I would pick the other one. And then you named your top 5, and my top 2 weren't even in your top 5.
Well, that's good. That's a good problem to have.
It is. It's a great problem to have, and it just shows the strength of the books this week. So for me,
it does. Yeah.
I'm trying to decide between Vicarious, which issue 4, which was absolutely amazing, and Tin Can Society.
Both excellent.
Number 5, because they both had like some holy shit moments, and I think I've picked Tin Can Society before as book of the week. I don't think I've picked Vicarious, except maybe I did the first week when it came out. I'm just not sure.
I think it was the first one, the first issue. I think.
Yeah. I think I have to go with Vicarious as my pick, only because that holy crap moment in Tin Can Society is just the last page. It's just the last page. We haven't got to see any we haven't gotten any answers or seen any fallout or seen where it leads. Whereas in Vicarious, the moment comes more toward the middle of the book, maybe about 60-75% of the way through, and we get to see some of the consequences of that conversation, that moment that Micah has with his father. So I mean, I'm grasping at straws here to say justify. I don't need to justify. I mean, they're both worthy of pick of the week, but I am going to go with Vicarious. But man, Tin Can Society's so good.
It is.
Hyde Street so good, like you mentioned. Deadly Tales of Spawn it's fantastic this week. Void Rivals, which we didn't even cover. Arcbound was great. Yeah, just a banger week for independence. And do yourself a favor, check out some of these titles. We know the distillery books tend to be a little more expensive, but the paper quality is fantastic. You get the oversized art, really, really great. Maybe you wait for the hardcovers, because then it's the price point is not their hardcovers aren't more expensive than regular hardcovers, even though single issues might be. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what indie books you're reading, what we might be missing out on. We know there's tons of books out there, so it's real easy for things to slip through the cracks. Don't forget, if you want our thoughts on all the DC titles this week, head over to Rocky's channel on YouTube, Comic Space Boom! ! Once you're there, like, comment, subscribe. We'd love to get conversations going in the comments. Let us know what you thought about the DC books this week. Also, don't forget to ring that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. That's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you joining us as always. Apologize for the voice. I'm trying to fight off a cold here. Thanks for joining us as always. We'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.